Hello there everyone, and welcome back. We're face off against Chaos once again for this episode, or at least to kick it off, and for some reason we're going to have more of the mass mounted battleships. I'm pretty certain this one is the one I was referring to before. That was all battleships, maybe two Desolators, two Despoilers. Either way, if you thought I had a bit of a hard time against Horus yesterday, or at least last episode, it's going to be more the same here. And I definitely got my work cut out for me with even more brute force, at least more muscle to back it up essentially. Since if they ram me, especially with the sheer amount of fighter squadrons that they have, keep in mind, not Desolator, but the Spoiler has 5 fighter bays to it, so it easily is over half the, or at least over double the fighters that I have access to, and then some. So I'm not likely to keep them at bay, especially with bombers. All I can really hope for is to try and keep them from at least launching of bombers in like both, at least launching of bombers like with both despoilers, that they have to kind of stagger it a tiny bit. Since with 4 charges on those battleships, it's not like I can reliably send them out or use up all their charges in a convenient and efficient manner. That's kind of the grim reality there, for even if I destroy the bombers on one battleship, they can just switch it up and launch fighters on the other one to kind of mix up and use up the remaining charges. So that route is not going to be very convenient unless I'm good about concealing myself, and I do have these 3 objectives to grab onto, or at least fly to at the very beginning, since my opponent's going to deploy over on the left, so I'm going to have early momentum to go in my favor, to a limited extent at least. Although they are going to probably boost right into that middle objective, as you can already see right there, and a beacon to kind of complement that. And we were talking about 2v2, I'm pretty certain this opponent was a lower admiral level, but still, this is a lot of meat to get through, this is a lot of health, and my opponent's going to be really diligent on trying to grab objectives, so this is not going to be a one-sided fight, I'm going to tell you right now. At least in my favor at least, but it's still 800 shields, it's still a lot of health, and if I could send out their numbers and make good use of my torpedoes, then hopefully I can clean them up efficiently enough. The trick, of course, is getting through the shields quickly and relatively safely, as I'm going to try and grab these 3 points before the actual engagement begins. And there's the indication that there's at least 2 despoilers for me to fight against. And I recall my fighters kind of hoping to keep them alive. Since it's like I said, I need all my charges and they are going to make it out, although with the gas clouds nowhere nearby, I am going to get revealed temporarily, which can be problematic when you consider the extreme range that these ships actually have as well, keep in mind. So I may have not taken the fighters as seriously as I could have in previous matches, like turning around, going to the asteroid belt, conceal myself, and doing what I normally do. Since already I'm taking flak, even without disruption overcharge for the Chaos Fleet. But my opponents recalled them, apparently, so I am going to be able to conceal them, which is a bit of an odd decision, since it would have enabled my opponent to continue firing, even with the brace for impact, so there is perhaps a little bit of paranoia that maybe I could kill off their fighters, at least for my opponent. But in truth, I don't think that's a valid strategy, or at least a practical one. Using the gas clouds kind of preemptively might help more, but with a beacon as well, that is also unlikely to work out. So I'm kind of going to be forced to get spotted at all times almost, especially since I'm trying to remember what this fighter was for. Oh, it was to kind of reveal the ships maybe? I honestly can't remember what this fighter was for, maybe to spot a frigate, since after all, that's kind of been my thing after all. And thankfully, at least the 2 despoilers are launching fighters and not so much bombers here, so I got a nice window to try and do damage. And with the supercharged void shield, I am going to try and avoid my pulsars getting expended there, since that could have been a ridiculous amount of damage that could have been absorbed, even with me currently in brace for impact for most of my cruisers. But we're getting good damage in. I did prioritize all the generators, so I'm hoping to keep those shields down and maybe prevent them from doing lightning strikes of sorts. And with that one cruiser stuck in the stasis bomb, I gamble, at least soften up quite well, or at least burn, force it to use a whole lot of its combustion gauge. Since it is going to get out, but it's not going to be able to maneuver very well, as already I got nice damage on this first one. Repairs negates the fire assaults though, and we got ourselves another beacon to kind of negate my one advantage I've had here up to this point. Even with the fighters kind of circling around, I could still back up and conceal myself some. And I don't really have the convenience to kind of continue to finish off that one battleship due to my lack of vision, but in all honesty I could have chased after it in retrospect, since this beacon, again, denies my one advantage, and it's even stuck onto me right now, isn't it? Which doesn't help matters much, since I can't even reposition at this point unless I want to isolate my, well, saying actually it's my light cruiser. I could actually sacrifice the light cruiser if the beacon is actually that problematic. There's a thought. Not practical, not one I would encourage, but even though the flagship itself has taken heavy damage, we're still crippling the other one really damn good. So it's still amazing damage up to this point. So the question becomes, why would this be dragged out? Well, like I said, my opponent's been incredibly diligent in at least grabbing the bottom point. So now I have 4 objectives to my 1. And the longer this drags out, the more and more further ahead they're going to get on the objective front. Even if I get this kill, it's just going to balance it out. I'm not going to really have much of a lead up to this point. A tiny bit, maybe because it's as a spoiler and not a desolator, which would be a little bit cheaper, but still. I kind of need to get some work done here. It goes without saying, and with my opponents, let's see, my ships are isolated, so I'm not going to get these to reinforce at least immediately, so much so that I boost forward to try and cut that distance down some. And at the very least, the light cruiser is actually soaking some damage for the Phoenix as well. But I think I just boosted there. This Desolator is going to try to go in for an aggressive maneuver, and I do get some torpedo hits at least, so it's prime for a possible killing blow. I just gotta be very mindful. I don't think there's... well, it did stop as the combustion gauge some, but I didn't get the boost in time. Those torpedoes hit me relatively quickly. I was gonna try and dodge them. It's the intention of why I turned like I did was to get behind them, kind of like how we seen against Horse, how I abused their lack of mobility and lack of high energy turn. And it worked really damn well there, but with the hull field gone, the bombers and fighters kind of all expended now, I'm just down to 3 cruisers, and well, the light cruiser is actually going to lose its crew. And with the deck gone, it's actually out of the fight immediately just because of losing the flagship. So it's not long for its world eater, especially with the hull field down. So suddenly we're 3 on 3, and they have the bigger ships. It's that simple to say. I boosted here recklessly to kind of stop those shields from recharging, especially since we've seen the flagship has supercharged void shield after all, and thankfully that does pay off. Another possible abuse of the spear crystal lenses, but it pays off immensely here. And now, we're stuck with 1 Desolator and 1 Despoiler, both with full health. And again, they have 4 objectives. Well, actually I neutralized 1 of them there, so it does delay the inevitable sum if I don't get the killing blow I want. And it's a good start. Temporary damage on the generator is amazing when I didn't really use all my pulsars just yet. I'm just wasting some of my torpedoes and definitely wasting my pulsars to a limited extent. And I almost even hit myself with my own torpedoes too, to kind of make things worse. So now I'm trying to prioritize or figure out which is the bigger focus. Ultimately I decide to board the Desolator to try and prepare for the endgame, basically, and kill off its crew and ideally cripple it to make my life a lot simpler. But my objective, my priority, is going to be the Despoiler, just because the bombers can ignore my hull field. And with their 600 movement speed, even though I killed that 1 bomber squadron, they're still going to do a notable amount of damage to me. And thankfully, even though they did take down my generator, I still am in a good position where that can't be punched just yet. I'm just trying to get what free damage I can here, since again my opponent's abusing the gas cloud to an extent that at least helps force him out, and now I have an opportunity to capitalize on this generator being down, as the boarding results I had earlier start to kick in. Although, alas, I did not take these bombers as seriously as I could have. I thought they were attacking the front cruiser. If I had turned this around and boosted on out, that could have survived that engagement, alas. And even though the audio cues suggest I had multiple torpedo hits, I got nothing there. It would seem, at least. The torpedo struck true. I was hoping for a lot more damage, and in the end, I actually ended up getting nothing. I'm a little bit shocked there. Even though the bombers were kind of helping out with shooting down said torpedoes after all. So that does throw off my momentum a tiny bit, since we're now with my opponent at 2,200 points almost. So in truth, I have a minute and a half, about 2 minutes before this game is over. Unless one of my cruisers happens to get killed by one of these ram attempts. Which thankfully does not happen, because that engine just got damaged, and that was a very scary moment for me. As I continue to attempt to board this this battleship here, try and kill off 2/3 of its crew, and again, my priority is to try and keep fixating on the despoiler here, try as I might. But the bombers, it goes without saying, are doing work here, ignoring this hollow field since I've been managing everything else incredibly well. This is where my Phoenix would be amazing, since it can stop all those bombers' attempts single-handedly without even trying. And another salvo run or two, I can possibly kill off this despoiler and I won't have to deal with them anymore, but my generator's gone. Generator's gone on both of them even, with cooldowns still active. I'm not going to be able to deal with that anytime soon. So even though I'm going to get this kill in a few moments, this despoiler is now the biggest threat suddenly just because of that. And it ultimately becomes a question on how can I turn this around, since I need to kill both these ships. And what I'm going to do is switch my priority right now to the deck. I'm going to force a mutiny on the ship as best I can. At least try as I might. And with the generator again gone, I'm going to finish this thing off. There are no more bombers to kind of harass me and with me crippled enough to possibly get a killing blow. And enough crew gone on that battleship that my boarding results can give me a permanent deck critical hit. And look at its morale right now even too. I have about another minute almost, but I'm about to win this right now. The deck's destroyed, the mutiny's gone, or the mutiny's triggered. That was incredibly tense, and it really just came down to my opponent being diligent enough to grab that 4th point, since we've seen a lot of my opponents just ignore that and kind of not take it as seriously. So I would argue maybe that was a bad engagement for me. Maybe I should have gotten in their face a little bit more or tried to disengage or at least circle around, but with 4 points there, I kind of had to fight there. I was forced to do something at least. Okay, match number 2, we're face off against Ustaz again, and they still are working their way up to leveling up the Chaos Fleet, but they still have mixed it up. I'm saying up a lot, and I don't like it. Either way, my opponent has decided to join the party of going all battleships this time around. So it's going to be interesting to see how this varies from the last 2 Chaos matches I had, since they have been close, they have been tense. But a lot of it does come down to the fact that it's just simply put a lot of hit points to get through. And it shows. The supercharged void shield has been blunted a tiny bit, thankfully, due to them either not knowing about the pause to the shield regeneration, or me being able to disengage my attack conveniently when I faced off against my last opponent there. Only my Phoenix really burnt its pulsars, and arguably, it's kind of the one ship I want to force said supercharged void shield anyway, since it only has 2 pulsars to its name, and its lascans can very easily start following up and softening the shields well after the charge expires at least. So it's my cruisers, if they get expended, that really hurts my momentum quite significantly there. And I tried cramming in enough there already. I dislike the pausing of the shields because of that. It counteracts what I would argue to be probably the best weapon, at least against pulsars, is the supercharged void shield. and of course anything that helps upgrade the shields also contributes to that fact. But with the battleships as resilient as they are, it's not a huge issue on its own, it's just the raw damage output. If I'm able to chain those shots consecutively enough for when they recharge, that's when it really starts to hurt, but critical hits so far haven't been the most impressive, I want to argue. Even with me trying to prioritize the generator to kind of allow me to then at least have freedom to disengage without their shields having to recharge. And like I said, this is another battleship type of fleet. The objective layout is a little more spread out, so I'm not forfeiting almost 4 objectives if I were to back off like potentially could have happened last time. And I see the fighter bays. I was thinking this was a Stig maybe. I was contemplating switching over to engines briefly, I think is what was going on there. Either way, generators are still prioritized. I'm about to reveal these ships, and I think I'm about to lose a fighter squadron as a result. And there's the reveal. At least 2 desolators and 1 despoiler there. And I'm pretty certain the last one's also a despoiler, but I could be wrong, since we do at least have a frigate revealing for my opponent. And inconveniently I lose my hull field at a bad time. That and a little bit of poor micromanagement on my light cruiser is causing it to take a lot more punishment than necessary. And since my opponent's going to be kind enough to let me kind of just keep him in place with the stasis bomb, I'm going to get some free damage in while I can. They may not be trapped in the stasis bomb, but this is still really good damage for me, at least initially. Just not like the full damage you would like. Time in a maelstrom while they're inside said stasis bomb, since I think I only got maybe 15-ish seconds of that maelstrom. Either way, we got ourselves a nice isolated ship, and even though Ustad's entire fleet can shoot at me, this is the comfort zone I want. There's no way they can retreat like we've seen before, so this thing is primed for death. And it's going to die in a spectacular fashion really quickly. It may not be the flagship, but it's a damn good start compared to what we just witnessed already. And it goes to show that position is pretty damn key, isn't it? Since there's no gas clouds, there is actually no points where Ustaz could have retreated. Whereas, again, I'm being bullied out and bullied away from the objectives, but since they're only getting 1 point currently, I'm not really sacrificing a whole lot as opposed to before. There's a lot of correlation, a lot of comparison between this and last match, and we're going to see a lot of the difference between those two as a result, I think. Not really to mock opponents or anything like that, but to kind of give the convenience to be able to see the difference and know, at least have a better understanding of what probably is going wrong, because I'm going to have a much more easier time against this fleet because of how isolated these battleships have been, and maybe I'm getting incredibly lucky on the critical hits too. That might be a factor as well. Never mind the fact that my torpedoes are doing full damage when I fire against their prow too, which may be due to the fact that they don't have brace for impact. That could also be a big factor, since I am kind of overlooking the fact that it does reduce damage, and more just I am aware that it makes the point defense more durable or more effective. And with that said, there goes a second battleship, completely isolated and no way for it to conceal itself. Maybe if I was more aggressive in the last match, maybe I could have tagged the first 2 battleships a lot quicker, but alright, I'm in good condition here. Nothing's at risk of dying at least. And I'm pretty certain it was 3 despoilers, yeah. 3 desolators and 1 despoiler this time around. So the bombers are going to be a lot less effective for that reason alone. Just because now my ships are all clumped up together too, that also helps. Maybe not so much when I'm trying to engage them, since this desolator is relentlessly chasing after me, and only just now does it have the possibility of utilizing a gas cloud. But conveniently, this frigate's a nice easy target for me too. Completely random, wasn't really intended, but it helps deal with the scanner pulses, since I think that's just an indication there's multiple frigates. And these torpedoes have been working incredibly well too. I'm feeling bold enough to use my Wraithbone shift to charge forward some. Not the most impressive hit, with that said though, as I only got what, 2 torpedo hits regardless. It is probably a little bit of misjudging the hitbox too. But we're going to get ourselves potentially another quick kill here with the Maelstrom compounding on this. I'm going to at least get another like 15 seconds worth of this Maelstrom at least doing damage, since it's going to get out momentarily. But the damage is connecting. No, that wasn't me who fired torpedoes, I just heard. That was my opponent doing that. And even with the plasma bomb, this is done. 3 battleships are gone. Sure, I may only have 2 objectives, but I got a nice healthy lead this time. And I like this. The reason I put this in here is because it's a good comparison, I want to think, between the 2 matches. Sure, the objective placement could be a big factor on that as well, since I have more freedom to run away, as opposed to the 4 objectives that I could have potentially lost if I did not at least keep putting pressure on my opponent. And having them isolate does help a lot too, but more so the fact that there's no cover or anything that could have used them at least make it difficult for me to engage at range at least. And again, torpedoes help tremendously when they connect too. So that's all she wrote. I feel a little bit bad for showing this because it almost seems like I'm... Well, I don't know what the phrase would be. But I like the intention of it being a good comparison piece at least. Although, I still am worried about what Eustaz's slaughter fleet could do once the upgrades are unlocked, especially Slanesh and the armor-piercing ammunition. Those are very big factors that could cause me a lot of problems if I'm not able to do the damage early on to at least cripple them before the actual engagement itself where I'm forced to commit. But it is still a 9-day difference, and I'm hopeful maybe that's a good learning experience for someone to at least judge, engage, and of course, like I said, Eustaz is still trying to get their skills unlocked. So I had that going for me as well. Alright, 3rd match of the episode, and we are going to be face off, finally, the 6th strike cruiser type of fleet. Although, alas, this is not going to be the Lance variant. It's going to be a weird type of hybrid, though, between strike cruise, fighter bays, and the torpedoes. In truth, I don't know how many actual boarding torpedo ones they have, because if they have more than 2 of the carrier ones, then they don't really they don't really have 6 strike cruisers, so maybe I could be completely wrong in that matter. But their entire fleet is consistent of entirely strike cruisers, and they do have a frigate. That's kind of where my head was at, so it's not truly 6 cruisers like I was making it out to be. So I'm completely wrong. I was hyping this up for no reason, especially since I was interested to see just how intimidating or how threatening the 8-second lance fire could be, especially in combination with disruption overcharge ultimately, because you wouldn't think to be threatening on their own. It's just the fact that they can chip me down at a rate that, 8-second recharge versus the 10-second pause that they do to my ship, so they can indefinitely keep bringing that down over time if I don't make good use of gas clouds or asteroid belts to kind of disrupt their shooting pattern. Or hell, another thing I want to try and experiment is having my other cruisers kind of intercept and block shots, but Eldari are one of the most difficult type of factions to kind of like have intervening cruisers kind of support and protect each other, because you see how narrow these ships are. There's almost no reason for me to be facing my broadside to my opponent, so it's insanely difficult to do that in a realistic or let alone a complete fashion. And by what I mean there is making sure none of the shots hit me, because only one of them needs to connect, or at least needs to connect to at least pause my hull field. So I am still itching to try out the true type of 6 cruiser fleet, or hell, even the boring torpedoes. I imagine that is still potentially a very dangerous type of fleet with some strike cruisers, or Thunderhawks rather, to kind of help screen for them. Since the Space Marines are amazing at boarding damage, so if they're able to compound that with some boarding torpedoes as well, they should be able to murder stuff incredibly quickly, at least on the crew of some ships, at least in the first offsets of the battle. They just may have to wait a bit for that troop damage to actually kick in though. And I'm still a little uncertain what this fleet is, since we do have the frigate confirmation on the left with the point being captured. And I'm guessing on the right is another frigate. So yeah, it is still 5 strike cruisers, but with the Thunderhawks, I'm kind of wondering if they're boring torpedoes still. And we're having a weird bug here where I'm trying to find these 2 hidden silhouettes. I get one of them, but how I'm trying to spot them is you can see my mouse cursor highlighting red there. If you notice quickly, that's how I know when I'm able to select them. Despite that weird glitch where I don't see the icon. But I'm feeling greedy, as per usual. You know my feelings about frigates, so sadly I do not have the extended range to try and compound and kill this hunter. That's the one downside here, because you see where that center objective is right now? That was the entire reason why I got the asteroid shields, or navigational shields. Actually, it's called polarized field, isn't it, for Eldari? But either way, it felt like it was really helpful in this exchange, at least to conceal myself, if nothing else, since I don't feel comfortable enough trying to grab that center objective either way. As made apparent with me trying to circle around.
You have seized a strategic
And then otherwise, I have 3 points. I feel comfortable with my situation, so I'm just gonna wait for my opponent to do something at least aggressive, and ideally make sure I'm positioned in a way that I can punish that. Since I know there's at least 3 or so in the gas cloud, so I'm not really fooled and I'm not really scared, since there's the rest of the supporting fleet so far behind right now. And I'm still wondering how many strike cruisers or launch bays we're having, because in my head, I know if they have 6 cruisers and they have any like fighter bays of any kind, they should not be able to afford a frigate. It just didn't dawn in my head during this time that we're actually dealing with 5 frigates. In my head, I pre-programmed myself thinking we're facing off against 6 cruisers. So there was a little bit of a glitch in the system, not realizing the fact we had multiple frigates. Either way, I got vision, the fighters are forcing them out of the gas cloud, and this damage is ridiculous. A lot of it is because I got the critical hits you can see there where I do full damage on the ship as opposed to its armor mitigating it. You saw multiple notifications of that. So that's where all that damage came from suddenly. It was mostly a good amount of luck, especially with the amount of critical hits we just got at the same time. Keep that in mind too, good god. It's a little absurd how fragile these strike cruisers can be, which is why I'm really itching to see if I should be worried about the 6 Lance type of fleets. Since already, that one ship's crippled and I was aiming for the engines, and we got a second engine critical hit to go with it. I'm still wondering what the heck else they're utilizing, because I'm not seeing torpedoes. I only saw hunters so far. Okay, that answers my question. At least one of the strike cruisers had boring torpedoes. Because all this time, I'm looking for lances, I'm looking for something to at least get a sense what this fleet composition is. Since right now, they are trying to steal points behind me, you can see with the 1 frigate. So they sacrificed the 1 strike cruiser for the convenience of multiple frigates to kind of outposition me and at least maybe grab points. But so far, the strategy has been just crippling them, not so much getting the killing blows, since we're looking at what, 3 strike cruisers that have no engines at the moment. And 2 of them without any prow. Keep that in mind too. And I was not expecting that light cruiser actually get the killing blow there. I was not paying attention to that. So overall, this is really damn good for me. But again, there's a lot I'm curious about. I have been eluded of the 6 strike cruiser fleet for a while, and I thought that was the main go-to fleet. It may possibly still can be, or still probably is, but I feel bad for negating their supercharged void shield there. It may only be 200 health, but I'm going to assume they were just too slow on the draw, since recharging 200 shield health is not really helpful for your negating pulsars, if I were to be perfectly honest. So right now, yeah, we're just limping this entire fleet right now. The critical hits on these fleet is kind of absurd, or I'm just getting ridiculously lucky. It almost makes me wonder if the Assisted runic targeting, or at least the lock-on stance, should be nerfed as well for the Asuryani, but you've already seen the difficulty, at least how difficult it's been for me getting critical hits against the battleships, so I almost want to argue maybe that's not needed. This is a demonstration against that, though, to an extent. Because right now, all these ships are either dead or lost their engines and prow. So they're not really a threat anymore. This match is done, this match is over. So alas, I didn't realize until after the fact that it is a lower level opponent, or admiral level opponent, so I don't even think they had disruption overcharge. Even though they probably weren't the best equipped to really capitalize on it anyway. So I do apologize to my opponent there.